CrimeDivers. I'm Laura.
And I'm Jill.
And welcome back.
Welcome back, everybody. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. It's now 2023.
Yes, thank you for coming back. Or if you're new here, great. Nice to have you.
Great start to your new year by joining us on our True Crime podcast.
Exactly. So we are back. We are refreshed and ready for a new year of True Crime.
Mm-hmm.
So before we get started, because today is a lot of sod.
Yes, you do have an update, don't you, Jill?
Yeah, I just actually noticed the other day that if anybody remembers, we did an episode a few months ago called The Black Widow.
Mm-hmm.
And that was Dina Thompson. She poisoned her second husband, Julian Webb. And she was just an absolute bonkers woman, wasn't she? She
went to Florida all the time, and
she tried to kill her third husband. She was actually still married to her first husband. Yeah. If anybody wants to go and listen to it, it was a bizarre story, called, as I said, called The Black Widow. But she was jailed, and she's been released now. So that's basically what I wanted to tell you. She's been released after 19 years. So she spent 19 years in prison, and she's out now, and she was seen. I just had to read this little bit. It's on The Sun.
Reliable source.
The 61-year-old was spotted after a spree in Poundland, dressed in a cheap black anorak, jeggings and Skechers trainers.
There you go.
I've got to say though, there's nothing wrong with Poundland.
Absolutely.
I do love a wee bit of Poundland, but I wouldn't exactly say I would have a shopping spree there.
Well,
I mean, you can't buy a lot of stuff.
I must admit, I'm not somebody that goes in there for a shopping spree. Like, I've been in just for a couple of things, maybe.
Yeah, you get bits and pieces, but to me a shopping spree is when you're actually really treating yourself to shoes and clothes and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. I wouldn't call that a shopping spree.
No, but fair enough. If that's what she wants to do.
But I just thought, what a funny thing to report though. Just that she was, exactly where she was. Could you just said she was out shopping?
How old is she now?
She's 61 now.
Right, okay.
And her third husband, Richard Thompson, who she did actually attempt to murder, he told the newspaper she'll get karma. And a former detective said, "This woman is every man's nightmare. For a decade, she targeted men sexually, financially, and physically." So if that sounds like something you want to listen to, off you go and listen to it. Because it was a really bizarre one. It really was.
Episode.
I mean, it's awful what she did, but just listening to what she did, it just seems unreal. Yeah. Like it was like something you'd see on the TV.
Absolutely.
Wasn't it?
So if you haven't heard it, or if you want to sometimes
refresh
it and actually go listen again, that was the Black Widow.
The Black Widow. Yeah. So enough about that. I just wanted to let everybody know that she'd done her time and she's out now.
Yeah.
So Laura, we're having a lot of so what is the title of your episode?
It's called A Young Execution.
Oh. Okay. So where in the world are we?
We're in America.
Okay. So should we just dive in?
Let's just dive right into this one. So during the summer of 1942, Lafayette, Indiana residents experienced a 6-week reign of terror in which 50 serious misdemeanor crimes were committed by one or more individuals. So I've got a few examples.
Right.
So beginning on the 2nd of June, the crime wave included 20 counts of breaking into cars, 3 counts of motorbike thefts, approximately 20 misdemeanor counts of shoplifting and petty theft, 6 home and business burglaries. Is that how you say it?
Burglaries.
Burglaries. Sound like you, aren't I? And 2 counts of aggravated assault occurred during 2 of those burglaries as well. So yeah, there was quite a lot of crime going on there in this little town.
That's weird. Was there something in the water?
There must have been, yeah. So I'll tell you a wee bit more about a few of these crimes, because there is one big crime that I'm going to tell you about, but it's just important to tell you these things as well.
Yeah.
So on the 20th of June, at around 2:30 a.m, Mrs. Mary Solar, 72, and her sister-in-law Emma Solar, they were both asleep in separate rooms when they were both awakened by someone turning on the lights to each room.
Oh, so they were just done by themselves. There was nobody else in the house.
No, they were just in their beds, separate rooms, and all of a sudden their bedroom lights came on.
Okay.
So obviously Mary, thinking that Emma was awake and needed help, she thought that's who had turned on her light. She stood up when a man wearing a mask threw a glass milk bottle It struck Mary on the left side of her head, which then bounced off her to hit a door frame where it shattered into pieces.
Oh.
So Mary then gave the burglar two $20 bills, which seemed to satisfy him, and he ran off.
He just wanted money.
Basically, yeah, I think so. So Mary ended up spending several days in hospital from her head injury and shock.
Yeah, that sounds like a sore one if it bounced off her head.
Well, exactly, I know. So Lafayette detectives investigating the case concluded that her attacker used a common-style skeleton key to enter the house. I'm assuming maybe
That's scary.
must have been a bit more easier back in those days.
How can you have skeleton keys for people, like, how?
No, but that was like back in like what the 1940s. So I mean,
That should never have been a thing.
well, no, it shouldn't have been a thing, but clearly it was. So the next aggravated assault came on the 30th of June while Miss Frances Knopf was ironing clothes in her kitchen as her two young children slept. Her husband was working night shift at an industrial plant, so she was obviously startled by a noise in the front room. She thought it was one of the children, so of course she went to check on them. But as she stepped into the front room, she was accosted by a masked burglar. She screamed as a young man threatened to kill her with a .38 caliber revolver, which he had found while searching a closet. So it was actually must have been her husband's gun or whatever. He then pushed her into another room and beat her up.
Oh.
So the burglar then ran out of the front door, taking the gun and a Waltham brand watch. I don't know, it must have been a popular watch brand, but at the time I hadn't heard of it. So of course Frances, she was suffering from shock and she sat on the floor for several hours before she actually found the strength to call for help.
Oh.
She called the police at 12:50 a.m. And her description of her attacker matched the description that the Solar sisters had given local detectives. So they were obviously already piecing together all the separate crimes, looking for connections. And knowing that Frances' attacker would look to sell the watch, they were keen to find out where it would show up. So their strategy worked. 6 days later, they found a man who purchased the watch in good faith for $3. Obviously, back then it would have been a lot of money.
I actually, yeah, but I straight away I just thought $3.
Yeah, but
wasn't worth it.
Yeah, back then it would have been a lot of money. And so basically, from him, they traced it back to the seller. So on the front page of the local papers, it was announced that the crime wave was over.
Okay.
With the arrest of 15-year-old Floyd Loveless and his brother, 17-year-old Robert K. Loveless.
So were they doing everything? Like
Yeah,
all the car thefts? And
basically, they all the connection, yeah.
All right.
Made all the connections to them.
So a 15-year-old and a 17-year-old?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So, the boys, they hadn't had the best childhoods. Like, their mother had stepped in front of a train when the boys were very young.
Oh no. That's awful.
That is awful. Totally. I mean, I can't imagine that. And their dad worked for the railroad, so he was often away working. He wasn't really around very much. So the boys, they were raised by their grandmother. And the boys, they were sadly no strangers to the law, as they both were already on probation for prior offences. And seven months earlier, Floyd was placed on probation after serving 9 days in jail for I can't say that word, burglary of a rural home. Don't laugh at me.
You laugh at me when I can't say words.
I know, but anyways, placed on
It
probation.
is quite a tricky one.
It is, isn't it?
Burglary.
Yeah.
That's not that tricky, is it?
No, it's not. Of a rural home near Lafayette. So, what was that?
Laura can't read her own right.
Oh yeah, Robert's probation stemmed from a 1939 conviction for motor vehicle theft. He first served time at White's Indiana Manual Labour Institute for that crime, and it was a juvenile facility with a school and a working farm.
All right.
Apparently. So behind bars, Floyd's confessions trickled out of him over the next 5 to 6 days. Eventually, after a very badly failed polygraph test, he was encouraged to get it all off his chest. So he had basically admitted that he'd done two assaults, he'd admitted to the burglaries, the motor vehicle thefts, and 20 counts of breaking into parked cars. So basically he just admitted everything that he'd been up to.
And that was a lot.
Yeah, that was a lot. So he was tried in juvenile court for first degree burglary. So Floyd, he was given the maximum sentence allowed, and that was commitment to the Indiana Boys School until he reached the age of 21.
Right. Fair enough.
And obviously it was, it was said that he could be released sooner if the school trustees believed that he had been reformed.
Yeah.
So as the institution was classed as a school, the 1,300-acre facility did not have an impassable fence or guard towers like a prison.
Like a prison
would. The only measure to prevent any boy from escaping was a locked door for their barrack-like quarters and a guard or two wandering the grounds. So there wasn't really a lot of security.
Yeah, well, I can understand that because it is, like as you said, it's not a prison.
No, it's just like it's like a juvenile facility to, for young boys that have committed crimes that obviously aren't going to adult prison. So Floyd, he arrived there on the 15th of July. And 30 days later, he and another boy, David Klein, who was also 15, escaped.
Okay. Here's me going, they don't need that much. Because that's what I was thinking in my head. Oh, it's not a prison. They don't need that much security. Okay.
Yeah. They clearly did. So they escaped. And it actually took 6 hours before someone noticed that they were even gone.
Okay.
So they clearly didn't, I suppose, keep a tight ship there, if you know what I mean. The boys managed to steal a car and drove west, most likely taking the US 40. They financed their trip by breaking into homes.
Well, yeah.
And of course, they've got form for that. And Floyd, he also found a revolver in one of them and decided that he was going to keep that for himself.
Oh, that's not good. No, I can't see this going to a good place.
No, because to be honest, he should have just left it. And shortly, that would change his life forever. That decision for him to take it on. So by the 20th of August, the two boys were near Elko, Nevada, where they had an argument, and basically they decided that it was best if they just split up because they just had different ideas.
They're just not getting on. It just wasn't working.
Exactly. At the end of the day, they only just met in this facility, so they'd only known each other a blooming month.
Yeah.
Or so.
They mustn't have been very compatible
Exactly. So they were just two guys that saw an opportunity to escape and clearly didn't want to continue on their paths together. They obviously disagreed about that. So they decided that, they'll split up. So Floyd, he let David keep the car, but David actually did stay with him until Floyd had managed to steal another one. So he didn't just totally abandon him.
Right. And he's the one that's got the gun.
Floyd's got a gun, yeah. So it basically got a car. So Floyd, he found a truck with keys in it. Happy days.
Yeah.
Nice and easy. But stealing the truck was Floyd's second biggest mistake that day.
Floyd, what are you doing?
Exactly. It belonged to Elmer Hill, the popular manager of the Horseshoe Ranch at nearby Dunphy. Everyone knew Elmer's truck.
Oh, so he picked like a really obvious one, that everybody's going to know.
Yeah, small town, this guy was obviously well known in the town. Everybody knew his truck.
Right.
So he made a mistake.
Yeah, so he didn't get one that was like, nobody's going to notice.
So he stupidly picked a very well known person.
Well, he wouldn't have known that.
Well, he wouldn't have known that.
He's still stupid.
Yeah, he's still stupid for doing it, but obviously he wouldn't have known that. I felt
like I was picking on you there for going, because you called him, because you went stupidly, and I'm like, but he didn't know that, and then I thought, why am I sticking up for him?
Because he did steal the truck. So he's still bad for stealing the truck.
I mean, I'm just sticking up for him.
Yeah, no, please don't stick up for him.
I take that back, he is stupid.
Apart from his mum jumping in front of a train, that was the last moment I felt sorry for him.
Fair enough.
Until then, after that, there's no more feeling sorry for him.
Okay.
So he'd stolen Elmer's truck. And when Constable Adolf Bernan learned the stolen truck was coming his way, he parked his car on the highway and waited. So he was like the local sheriff guy. Or constable, sorry, not sheriff, constable. So the constable, he didn't have long to wait at all. He'd served as the town's constable for 26 years.
Oh, he knows his stuff.
Yeah, he was known as a reliable lawman. You know what I mean? He was, he looked after the town and, kept the law, as you say. So, but on that day, shortly before noon, the odds were against him. He spotted Elmer's truck, noticed someone else was driving it, and stood there until it stopped. And Constable Bernan obviously the truck stopped. Floyd stopped the truck, and Constable Bernan walked over, opened the door, and told Floyd...
Oh, did he shoot him? Sorry.
I haven't got to this bit yet.
Stop coughing.
I can't help it. I'm not feeling
If either of us cough, then we do apologise because Laura's daughter's got a wee cough. She's never stopped coughing. That she's kind of passed on to us, so we're We're doing not too bad, but we might have a cough now and again, so we apologise if we do.
I'm trying not to, but it's sometimes it's coming to the point where I can't help it. So yeah, so Constable Brennan walked over and he opened the door and told Floyd that he would have to take him in for being in a car that didn't belong to him.
Mm-hmm.
So not sensing any danger, Brennan actually got behind the wheel, and obviously forcing, he obviously opened the driver's door. Basically, he was going to get in the wheel and he kind of forced
Shoved him along, yeah.
Shoved him along over to the passenger seat. Floyd then pulled out his gun and said that he wouldn't go back with him. Brennan tried to grab the gun, so Floyd shot him.
Ugh. I knew that was coming.
Yeah, the gun then got jammed, so they basically started fighting, but then Floyd pulled the trigger again and this time it fired.
Right.
So Constable Brennan, he collapsed on the driver's side, but Floyd, he actually managed to pull him over to the passenger's side. So he must have, obviously he was in the passenger side, he managed to pull him over, got out the passenger side and then managed to walk back round to the driver's side. So Floyd got back in the car and basically started driving.
So he drove off with him in the car?
Yeah, with him in the car, yeah. So over the next few miles, Constable Brennan was moaning in agony because he'd been shot, obviously. He'd been shot a couple of times. And, Floyd told him that he was taking him to the hospital.
Okay, I don't think he was though, was he?
No. Instead, he actually ended up catching up with David Klein. Because obviously he'd driven off after he'd got the truck and driven off ahead. But he'd actually stopped at a highway, on the highway at a petrol station. And, it was basically a middle of the nowhere. It was in the middle of nowhere petrol station.
Yeah.
They'd obviously stopped. So Floyd literally abandoned the truck and jumped in with David. And the two of them just drove off. Cause he
left the constable in the car?
Because they must have thought, oh, look, there's David. I'm just going to stop. Literally abandon the truck. And that
other guy's probably well, I didn't get rid of him for very long, did I?
What the fuck happened? So, of course, David asked what had happened.
Yeah.
And Floyd said that he shot the officer and left him in the truck. But, David didn't say anything at this point. He just carried on driving until he suddenly said that he saw a pistol by the side of the road. So David pulled over the car, and when Floyd went to look, he basically drove off and left him there.
Okay, well, yeah, he's obviously going, well, I'm not assisting this murder.
Yeah, I think he obviously just listened to what he said, probably thought, oh shit, I'm not getting involved in this.
Yeah, I mean, because he's probably only been involved, petty crime, stealing cars and all that kind of stuff.
Murdering's a whole new, ball game.
I'd be the same. I'd be like, no, I have nothing to do with this.
So he obviously drove a little bit, thought, nah, fuck this.
Yeah.
Made up some story about seeing something on the side of the road, pulled over. Of course, Floyd went over to look. He's like, nah, see you later.
Yeah, don't blame him.
But David, his time on the run was actually about to end, though, as 90 miles further down the highway, there was actually a roadblock waiting for him. So David tried to drive around it, forcing him to take a 7-mile dirt road that was a dead end, but obviously was trapped.
So he got caught.
Because bear in mind, these boys were still on the run from their juvenile place, so obviously they must have been spotted, and eventually he's been caught.
And he'll have another charge of theft. Thieving the car and escaping the facility.
Exactly.
To put on to his record.
So a police car, followed him and up this dirt track, and they actually fired their gun 9 times at the car, hoping to stop him, but none actually managed to. And then they stopped when David realised that he was at a dead end, and obviously he had to turn round and tried to spin back towards them, but they set up another roadblock. So David was trying to avoid it again, but he was again shot at with which 2 shots hit him in the cheek, and that was it for him. He was taken into custody.
He got hit in the cheek?
Yeah, totally. So meanwhile, Floyd's arrest, that was less dramatic, as an Elko County Deputy Sheriff found Floyd just walking along the highway a few miles west of where he had been abandoned, because obviously he didn't have a car.
He'd just been abandoned. Because he was in the middle of nowhere, wasn't he?
Exactly, so he was just walking down the highway. So he was just found there, and of course the other police they'd found Constable Brennan, who was now paralysed from the neck down apparently from these shots.
God.
I know. So on the drive to Elko County Jail, Floyd confessed to stealing the truck and shooting Brennan, and when he met up with David behind bars, because obviously they got taken to the same police station, because obviously it'd been, it was a small place. When he met up with David behind bars, he actually took back his confession and refused to say anything more. So Floyd was just like, no. He confessed in the car, but as soon as he got to jail, he was like, no, I'm not saying anything.
Okay.
I'm just basically not confessing to it. And sadly, Constable Brennan died. He died from his wounds 36 hours later.
Ugh, that's
So,
awful.
I know.
Poor guy.
Totally. I mean, he was just obviously doing his job, and,
Yeah.
you know, as police officers do every day, they put their lives at risk, and
Exactly. I mean,
9 times out of 10, it could have just been a normal arresting. You've stolen a car, you know, I'm taking it to the station, but on this occasion...
Yeah, I mean, like, it sounds like quite an easy... Oh, there's a kid driving somebody else's car.
Yeah.
And yeah, he would have been like, oh, right,
Exactly.
let's go and get him arrested, and
Exactly, so awful.
ends up dead. That's awful.
I know. So Elko County's case against Floyd began in juvenile court, but it was soon bumped up to district court, and that was a move that would actually have him tried as an adult.
Oh, he's
So
only
bear-
15 though.
Yeah, I know.
And in America, you should be 18, shouldn't you,
Yeah,
like, to be an adult?
Yeah, this is like in the 40s, so maybe they, I don't know, they obviously
Might have been
decided.
different, but like that, he's still at 15. You shouldn't be tried as an adult.
No, I agree.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm like, he's a murderer, but you know,
Yeah.
he's still a child.
Exactly, but no, he was bumped up to district court. So I said they would have him tried as an adult. He was formally charged with murder on the 12th of September. He pleaded not guilty on the 22nd of September, and his trial began on the 28th of September, and that was 39 days after he'd shot Constable Vernon. So Floyd was quickly found guilty, and his defence only had one strategy, and that was to avoid the death penalty.
Yeah.
David Klein, the boy that he'd run away with, his actions to testify against Floyd saved him from being charged as his accomplice. So he would later end up in jail for interstate motor vehicle theft and held until the age of maturity. So
Right.
he didn't get charged alongside Floyd as being his accomplice because he testified against him, but he still ended up in jail.
But I mean, he
this
didn't.
year.
He wasn't his
Oh, no.
accomplice. He didn't
Yeah,
do
he
it.
didn't do
I mean,
anything, yeah.
he just ran away and stole a car, basically.
But Floyd's defence failed, and Floyd was sentenced to death.
Oh, okay.
At 15 years old. His execution was set for the 13th of December that year. One newspaper pointed out his sentence could later be changed to life in prison by the State Board of Pardon and Parole or the governor, but it was clear from the beginning that that was never going to happen. Like, they weren't going to downgrade it from the death penalty.
Right.
And you know, because I said it was clear from the start, it was never going to happen. From the time that he'd been bumped up from juvenile to district court to the judge sentencing him to death, newspapers lied about Floyd being 16 years old. Because so basically in the papers they were saying that he was older. I don't know if that was just so that they could basically get away with charging him as an adult. Like, nobody ever, they didn't say that he was 15. And
Do you think that they're charging him as an adult and they're pushed for the death penalty and everything because it was a police officer that he killed?
possibly, I mean, there was never anything,
Because it was one of their own, basically, you know.
totally. But I mean,
I just wonder because, like, he's 15, yes, he's committed murder, but to be trying him as an adult and wanting the death penalty, that's a lot, like,
yeah. But I mean,
for a child.
the thing is, like, obviously, like, you know, everybody, like, you know, they had all the files there. You know, the papers didn't make a mistake about his age. Like, they all knew that he was young.
Yeah.
But they obviously, you know, because especially back in those days, I mean, that, you know, newspapers, I suppose, would be quite a big thing for information because we don't have things like
Well,
internet and all
obviously,
that
yeah,
sort of
that's
stuff.
where you get the news from.
Exactly. So everybody knew he was 15, but yet the papers were allowed to publish that he was older, so that basically he could be tried as an adult and sentenced to death. So I find that a bit off, like them doing that. I mean, I think, obviously, as you said, you know, he is a murderer. You know, there's no denying that. He deserves, obviously, to be punished. But it should have been...
Properly, you know, like, lawfully.
Yeah, lawfully.
Yeah.
If you want a fair trial, to me, that's not him getting a fair trial.
No.
Because he's been tried as an adult in an adult court when he should have been tried and convicted in the juvenile court.
Of course.
So, but
It's not right.
Exactly. So, but there was no... there was no reason to sort of say exactly why they did that. But obviously they did.
I think it's because it was a police officer.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think, you know, the only thing that I did right was that, obviously, that by them saying that he was 16, it made Floyd seem more of a man and less of a boy than if his true age was published. So they obviously wanted, I guess, to justify their way of dealing with him, maybe. and making it look like, you know, he is more of an adult than he is a boy if we say that he's older.
Well, it's not right.
No.
Everybody should be treated the same way. You know, an adult tried as an adult, a child as a child. No matter what the crime is or who the crime is committed against or whatever. I mean, it should be the law is the law.
Well, yeah.
You know why they shouldn't be able to change it.
Now they wouldn't get away with that.
No, of course
you would never
not.
get away with that now.
But even back then, they shouldn't be able to. I mean, as I said, the law is the law, and you can't play God.
No,
and that's what it is. They're playing God by.
Yeah, like they've bent it to their...
you shouldn't be able to bend the rules.
No, exactly. So Floyd, he was transferred to Nevada State Prison where he lived on death row. And 2 weeks before his execution date, an appeal was put in by his lawyer, and he pointed out that Floyd was found guilty of murder, but the kind of murder was left out. And according to Section 10068 of Nevada Compiled Laws 1929, murder is not just murder. First degree or second degree murder must be clearly spelled out in the charges and instructions to the jury. So basically they were saying that when he got convicted, he was just like, right, you're guilty of murder. But they never stated whether that was first degree murder or second degree murder.
I was wondering that. I was like, because usually they always say first or second.
Yeah, so basically that's what the appeal was based on. That no, they didn't. So on the 21st of April 1943, the Nevada State Supreme Court ordered the verdict set aside and Floyd Loveless was to receive a new trial.
Okay.
The second trial began on the 15th of November 1943. This time the language was clear and, surprise, surprise, you know.
And has he still been tried as an adult?
Yeah.
Right. Don't know why I bothered asking that, because I knew.
No. But so basically it was guilty of first degree murder.
First degree murder.
There was no denying it. So Floyd was now 17 at this point.
Right, yeah.
And he was again sentenced to die in the Nevada gas chamber. There was another appeal on the 16th of August, but that appeal was denied and the execution was set for the 19th of September 1944. During his last 44 days, his attorney filed a writ of habeas corpus claiming Floyd was insane, but that only delayed his execution from 5 a.m. the morning to basically later in the evening.
Oh, okay.
The warden read his death warrant out to him and a physician attached a stethoscope to his chest, and Floyd's last request to the warden was for roses to be sent to his grandmother back in Indiana.
Oh.
Which was granted. They did send it back to Indiana.
Oh.
His daughter roses. And at 6:24 p.m. he was led from his cell and walked his last 13 steps with Father Bull by his side. Although no last words were recorded, it is customary for prisoners about to be executed to ask for forgiveness from all those in life that they had hurt and to forgive all who sinned against him. Floyd was then strapped into a steel chair and the doctor connected the stethoscope to monitor just outside the small cinder block building. And at 6:27 p.m, sodium cyanide pellets were dropped into a pot of sulfuric acid, and within 60 seconds the room had filled with white poisonous smoke. Floyd took a deep breath as he had been advised to, and by 6:29 p.m. he was pronounced dead.
I don't agree with it.
And so I wanted your thoughts on that, actually.
I don't agree with it.
Because I didn't really... this is why I wanted to do the case, because obviously I've never known of a person that young to be executed. I don't know if you do, I don't...
No, I wouldn't have thought that would have been allowed. But to try him as we already said, to try him as an adult, it's just not right. I mean, like...
Because at the end of the day, if he had been tried as a child, he wouldn't have got the death sentence.
Exactly. I mean, like, he's a murderer. There's no getting away from it. He deserves to be punished for what he did. But I just feel like they picked on him. You know what I mean? Like... I still think it's because he killed one of the police force. I think they went down hard on him, and it's not right. As we said before, the law is the law, and you shouldn't be able to bend and twist it to the shape that you want it to be.
Exactly. It's almost like they just decided, right, this boy's killed an officer, whatever, you know what, we're just going to give him like the worst sentence that we can, which is death, and you know we'll just make it out like he's older so that we can do that, basically.
Yeah, see, that's what gets me. It's like if he had been an adult and they had sentenced him to death, then I would have been like, oh, right, okay, whatever. I mean, you know, as we said before, I don't really know where it's a kind of fuzzy line that, isn't it? The death penalty. But I wouldn't have really thought much of it. I would have been like, oh, okay, that's what he got sentenced with, that's what he got. But to lie about his age, and it just makes it, as I said, like, they've just bent the rules.
Yeah, exactly.
And that shouldn't be allowed.
And obviously to the public, I mean, he was older. Like, what was written in the paper with his age, you know, they accepted that, because obviously back in those days you wouldn't be able to, you know, what you read in the paper was, you probably thought was fact, probably. And, you know, he was, he was still a boy at the end of the day. And
he should have been punished according to his crime and his age. You know, yes, he murdered,
yeah,
but he should have been punished for that as a 15-year-old.
Exactly, fully deserved to be punished. You know, but he was 15. You know, his birthday happened. He was obviously 16. You know, as he was getting sentenced as well, and then obviously eventually 17 when he got actually executed. But I mean, to me, that's still
no, it's not right.
That's not an adult. You know,
No.
even so.
To me, it's not even so much the fact that he was executed. It's just the way they went about it. You know, the lies about it, and
yeah,
exactly. As I said, that's more a. No, it's just not right.
No, that's just the law, bending the law to fit what they wanted to
well,
do.
exactly, and that shouldn't be allowed. You can't.
As I said, you would never get away with that now. Like, in this day and age, there's no way you'd get away with that now.
You should never have been able to get away with it.
You should never be able to get away with it, but
if you think about it, like, in the 1940s wasn't that long ago.
No.
I mean, we're not talking the 1800s, the 1700s or whatever. We're talking, like, people who were born in the 40s are still alive today.
Well, that's very true.
Our mum was born in the 40s, you know, so it's not that long ago.
Yeah, no, you're right.
So, no, it shouldn't, that's not on.
No, I agree. So
yeah, I mean, like, he did wrong.
Oh, absolutely. Like, he deserved to be
He was a criminal. He murdered somebody, which is not on. He deserved to be punished, but he deserved to have however many years incarcerated.
Yeah, exactly. I think he should have been sent to prison.
And he could have been reformed. There's plenty of people who have done
exactly, because
crimes that have been reformed.
Obviously researched and read about it. I mean, obviously they were obviously predominantly been in like the petty crimes of burglaries and all that sort of stuff, and obviously, you know, he escaped where he was, and he made the mistake of picking up a gun, and then he stole a car that was obviously a very well known person's car. So there was a lot of errors there that led to it happening. That, you know, I don't think he set out to murder the police officer that day.
Exactly. I was actually just thinking that. I was thinking it wasn't premeditated.
No,
he didn't set out to go and murder somebody.
No,
it doesn't take it away from it, the fact that he took somebody's life.
Exactly.
But I could understand more if it had been premeditated.
Yeah, exactly. He just made a series of errors that led to the circumstance of that he did end up shooting and killing a police officer, which, you know, as it is a horrific crime. But his intention was to escape the facility and just drive to wherever it is he thought he wanted to go.
He was just trying to escape.
Yeah, basically.
And he made a stupid mistake.
Well, he made two errors by picking up the gun in the first place, and sort of stealing the person's car.
How can these people say that he couldn't be reformed?
Exactly.
Because it wasn't who are they to say that he was going to do that again? You know, and that it's just for me. It's not right.
No.
He should have been tried as a child, and he should have been. It wasn't a premeditated murder, but he did take a life, so he should have been punished for that. And as I said, I mean, like, he might have went on to be an awful person, but we don't know that because they would have killed him.
Well, exactly. You know, I mean, he was
He
still
could have
young.
been reformed.
Exactly, he was still a young boy at the end of the day. So
he never set out to be a murderer. That's the thing. He never set out to be a murderer. So who's to say that he was going to be a danger to anybody else? You know, once he'd done his time.
Yeah, exactly. So,
but it's just not right how they went about it, and
no, that's why I was interested to do that case, because I just thought, I'm sure there'd be an opinion or two there about.
Well, I would love to hear anybody else's opinion. So if anybody has anything to say about the matter, then you can get in touch with us on our social media. We're at Instagram and Twitter at crime_divers_pod. Our email is crime_divers_pod@outlook.com. We're on TikTok. YouTube is Crime Divers Podcast. If you would like to join our Patreon, which is bonus episodes, early access to episodes, ad-free episodes, then it's patreon.com/CrimeDivers. If you would like to buy us a coffee, as some people have already done, which is greatly appreciated.
100%.
It's buymeacoffee.com/CrimeDivers.
And if you haven't already, as always, just please like, rate and review. Thanks for listening.
Bye.